After the summer drought, steam is back on the main line. Amid all the cancellations, failures and postponements, steam did actually make it to and from Penzance, albeit with some problems on the way. Unfortunately, it wasn't the Great Western's day. Bradley Manor failed, and 70,000 Britannia stole the limelight. This is Steam Video, issue 23, the video magazine for the steam enthusiast. In this edition, news with comprehensive coverage of the autumn's return to steam. Steam returns to Shap in a remarkable series of timing runs on the classic climb from Carnforth to the Cumbrian summit, featuring Duke of Gloucester, Sir Nigel Bresley and Duchess of Hamilton. The usual clutch of steam galas heralded the start of the autumn on preserved railways throughout the country. We sample three favourites: the Severn Valley, the East Lancs and the North Yorkshire Moors Railway. Archive film with film from the camera of Peter Goddard from the southern and Scottish regions in the glorious years of steam. Steam Showcase with steam action from the country's leading steam cameramen. Mainline steam finally returned to England and Wales on the 16th of September when the rail track imposed ban was lifted. The first special since June was hauled southbound over the Settle and Carlisle behind 46203 Princess Margaret Rose. Loco carried the 60th anniversary headboard, which should have been used in early July on a train from Bedford to Carlisle and return. With tour operators pulling out of the market and privatisation wreaking ever more havoc on the charter train market, 46203 was marking an even more uncertain return to steam. What specials passed through these classic viewpoints in the future is anyone's guess. A period of sustained rainfall after weeks of drought allowed the lifting of the ban. The following day, 46203 worked along the North Wales coast. Unfortunately, all did not go to plan. The only platform in Holyhead Station passed for steam operation was closed due to a broken rail. As a result, the train was diesel hauled from Llandudno Junction to Holyhead, and 46203 followed on light engine. At Holyhead, the train used platform 2, which could not be used for the steam's arrival since the clearances hadn't been checked. 46203 was positioned off the edge of the platform. In October, the Princess made 2 trips along the North Wales coast. The first originated at Nottingham and ran along the North Staffs line to Crewe. This was the first time daylight steam had traversed this route with fare-paying passengers since 1968. A week later, the Princess started another North Wales Coast special, this time from Crewe. Once again, it wasn't possible to run beyond Llandudno Junction due to the same broken rail at Holyhead. The Scarborough line saw a visit by Duchess of Hamilton early in October. This trip by Pathfinder Tours has been the only visit of steam to the East Coast Resort this season. Originally, this train was to have run to Hull via Bridlington and then used the Harrogate Circle. In the event, these routes were unavailable, so 46229 returned to York and then ran south to Sheffield. The 35028 Clan Line has embarked on a series of lucrative runs on the Southern using the air-braked Orient Express stock. The first of these luxury outings took place in late September, with a run from Victoria to Dover via Tunbridge and Ashford. Ashford, the tour ran along the delightful semaphore-signalled line to Canterbury, where the train had a 4-hour stopover. These luxury charter trains appear to be the only sector of the mainline steam market able to afford the high charges imposed by Railtrack. Unfortunately, Clan Line is the only locomotive fitted to work this stop, so other locomotives will be unable to secure a slice of the action. After the stop at Canterbury, the special returned through Dover. 35028 is seen passing at the now closed Western Docks station. The absence of heads at the windows shows this is no enthusiast special. The autumn also saw the Bullard in charge of a number of ocean liner specials from Victoria to Southampton and return. These connected with the QE2 and Oriana sailings from the docks and were routed outward via Virginia Water, rejoining the main line east of Woking. Note the 47 provided for train heating. Now, more southern steam in the form of 30777 working the Pathfinder Tour's Strong Countryman. This originated at Reading, running to Eastleigh and Bournemouth and return. From the main line scene to the private sector. In between its main line runs, 46203 has been a performer at its home base, the Midland Railway Centre, this autumn. Although based here, 46203's running opportunities are limited because of its weight. Standard 4 80080 returned to traffic in mid-September. The Standard is based here and had received a major overhaul following expiry of its boiler certificate. The Princess departs Butterley soon after the Standard's arrival. To mark the formal opening of the new Snow Hill to Smethwick jewellery line, sister locomotive 80079 was used to power a shuttle service to Starbridge. The train, full of local dignitaries, including the mayor, leaves Snow Hill on the first of 4 return journeys. Snow Hill last saw a revenue-earning steam working in the form of Clun Castle in 1968, although the appearance of today's station has changed somewhat since then. On the first run, the train stopped at all the new stations so that opening ceremonies could take place. The Standard leaves the Jewellery Quarter station in a steady downpour. This line has been laid over previously abandoned trackbed and represents a welcome railway revival in the area. Now, the superb view from Old Hill looking towards Starbridge. The Severn Valley base, Standard 4, climbs the bank in what many consider to be the highlight of the 35-minute trip. steam finally made it over the Devon banks to Cornwall in the autumn, although the trip wasn't to be without its problems. Haulage for this Waterman Railway special was provided by 7802 Bradley Manor and 70,000 Britannia, masquerading as 70019 Lightning. Unfortunately, the Great Western component of the trip wasn't to make it beyond Devon. Bradley Manor was removed at Plymouth with a melted tender axle box bearing. The Brit crosses the Salt Ash Bridge, representing the first mainline steam into Cornwall since 1985, when Clun Castle worked as far as Truro. There was more bad news to come. Near St Austell, the train stalled due to a combination of a 1 in 60 grade and slippery rails. 1.5 hours were lost, and the ensemble was provided with a Class 47 banker for the final leg of the journey. A week later, Penzance Station and its magnificent surroundings once again awaited the sight and sound of steam. $70,000, together with a Class 47 for insurance, were to be greeted by unprecedented crowds. 7802 Bradley Manor was still unavailable despite repair attempts, and this duo were to work all the way to Bristol. Once over the Devon banks, the special ran along the coast and past some classic viewpoints. More steam is planned from Exeter to Plymouth early next year. The autumn has seen the steam calendar suffer considerable upheaval as trains were cancelled or else postponed. Some did actually run, among them the Itchen-Avon Explorer, which took S15 number 828 from Eastleigh to Bristol in return. The Severn Valley Railway Base 7325 worked the railway's tour to Swansea in delightful autumn conditions in early November. This had been postponed for 7 days due to problems with the booked locos. In fact, the train was single-headed at this stage due to the continued unavailability of Bradley Manor. After a water stop at Worcester, the special ran to Bristol. Here it was joined by Britannia, standing in for Bradley Manor for the onward journey to Swansea. Once again, the Brit was to lose its companion, with the Mogul failing at Swansea. Such is the uncertainty of today's mainline steam sea. The sight and sound of steam over Shap became legendary to the photographers of the 1960s. Locations like Scout Green on the final ascent to the summit provided a succession of trains climbing the one in 75 from T-Bay. Scout Green Box served to break up the long block section between T-Bay and the summit, thus increasing the capacity of the line. The box guarded a lonely level crossing. The London and North Western's main line ran north from Carnforth through the Cumbrian hills to Carlisle. The grade started at Carnforth with an intermediate summit at Grey Rig. Highlight was undoubtedly the final 1 in 75 4-mile climb to the summit. "46255 City of Hereford heads upgrade during 1962. In the early 1960s, the Duchesses were giving way to Type 40s on the top expresses, and they were consequently relegated to relief and parcels duties. Steam finally finished on the 31st of December 1967. A few weeks before the end, an 8F is banked by one of Tibet Shed's standard 4s. These had taken over from the Fowler 264s during the final phase of steam operations. The following years saw the line over Shap electrified, while the classic viewpoints were marred by mast and overhead wires. The possibility of steam became ever more remote. However, in 1995, all that was to change. Official timekeeper Mike Notley takes up the story.
Without doubt, the most exciting and important steam mainline event in 1995 were the Shap time trials organised by Days Out Limited, run on the 30th of September, 2nd and 3rd of October, and featuring 3 Pacific locomotives: 6007 Sir Nigel Gresley, 71,000 Duke of Gloucester, and 46229 Duchess of Hamilton. This was the first time in 28 years that steam had attacked these 2 famous banks of Grey Rig and Shap, and it was appropriate that on the first day it was driver Les Jackson of Crewe who was at the controls of 6007 as she made the first assault on these banks. I say appropriate because in 1967, in April and October, Les had been fireman on 6007 on the last 2 occasions on which she'd climbed these famous banks.
28 years later, the A4 once again started the ascent to Shap. The foot of the bank to Grey Rig was passed at 60 miles per hour. A steady climb to the first summit was achieved despite power being eased somewhat due to a faulty injector. Today, the motorway and its incessant roar dominates the view from the fell sides. The A4 was around 40 minutes late, largely due to watering problems at Barton Loop. Tibet was fast approaching. Mike takes up the story.
Over the site of the former troughs at Dillikar, everything on the footplate was being readied for what must, I think, be considered the star attraction, and that is the attack on Shap. We're starting with 2 miles at 1 in 146, but finishing with almost 4 miles of 1 in 75, a fearsome gradient for any locomotive apart from the superb modern electrics which drift up the bank seemingly effortlessly. At the bottom again, speed had to be restricted to 60 miles an hour, and Les got it again almost exactly right.
The A4 is approaching Greenholme at the start of the 1 in 75 climb. From 60 miles per hour at Tibet, the speed had dropped into the 50s. As the A4 progressed further upgrade, speed dropped back slightly. This effort is in sharp contrast to today's electrics, which appear to drift up the gradient. We're looking from Scout's Green and the site of the former box. Further on is the summit, where speed would drop into the 40s, finally drifting down to 35 miles per hour by the time the summit was reached.
It was a commendable performance, not a great performance, but a very sound, excellent piece of running by Les Jackson.
The weather this day had been kind, but all that was to change. The Cumbrian hills are known for their bad conditions, but these were worse than ever. The wind came, and the heavens opened as 71,000 started its climb.
At Oxenholme Station, she was doing 63 miles an hour and continued to climb this famous bank at over a mile a minute, reaching the summit eventually at a speed of 61. Her EDHP for this climb, something just short of 2,200. Not winded by this effort, she then faced Shap just 5 minutes later, and again Ray Hatton took her onto the trial section at just below the 60 mile an hour that he was allowed to do so. On the early stages she was opened up gradually, and the gradient is 1 in 146 on the bottom part of Shap, and she held her speed virtually constantly on that section. By the time she reached the 1 in 75 for which Shap is famous, she was down to around about 55 miles an hour, but she was going really well. On past Greenholme and up past Scout Green, speed had steadied down to about 51 miles an hour, and the top 2 miles of Shap on 1 in 75 were covered at 51 miles an hour without the slightest drop in speed at all. This last 2 miles involved an EDHP of something in the region of 2,750. An absolutely superb performance coming so soon after a record-breaking climb of Grey Rig. At the top of Shap, she was doing 51, and immediately Ray Hatton shut off, she started to blow off. Quite an incredible performance.
After Shap, the Duke tackled Ace Gill.
The time for the climb from milepost 275 to Ace Gill summit at milepost 259 3/4 was 16 minutes and 28 seconds. Slightly outside the blue ribbon record held by 46229, but given the rail conditions which were damp and caused some slipping, a great performance.
On Tuesday the 3rd of October, it was the turn of 46229 Duchess of Hamilton. Torrential rain was once again the order of the day, as the Duchess topped Grey Rig summit at 45 miles per hour. Unfortunately, mechanical problems, including faulty injectors, handicapped her performance, with the result that the train approached Tibet at 54 miles per hour instead of the 60 planned. Driving rain whipped up by strong winds made the linesiders' lot miserable, while filming was difficult in the extreme. We're now looking from the line side at Shap Wells, and our third cameraman, drenched in the driving rain, takes over. Despite the slower start, the Duchess managed to achieve an EDHP of 2,207, just 163 less than the Duke. This effectively gave her second place in the race to the summit, with the A4 coming in third. The Duchess was to top the summit at 41.5 miles per hour compared with 51 for the Duke and 35.5 for the A4. With the rain still lashing the fell sides, the Duchess approaches the final test. A-Skill was to be topped at 45 miles per hour compared with 54 for the Duke and 33 for the A4. In terms of EDHP, the Duke was first, the Duchess second and the A4 third. These trials over Shap could well be the steam event of the decade. Their success is a tribute to all those involved and extends further the boundaries of railway preservation. For many, the autumn galas mark the start of the true steam season on the private network. This year's glorious conditions provided some memorable sights. Seven Valleys Gala was held over the 23rd and 24th of September. Resident Manor 7802 passes Hay Bridge for Bridgnorth. The Somerset and Dorset 7F was one of a number of visiting engines. The loco moves out of Bridgnorth Yard, ready to take up the day's workings. Great Western Pannier 5764 is based on the Severn Valley. It's descending Erdington Bank. Freights on this section are rare, normally being confined to the line between Kidderminster and Highley. Another visiting locomotive was 1466 from the Didcot Railway Centre and fresh from a period of service on the Chinner to Prince's Risborough line. Six 0009 was back in traffic following routine maintenance. Note the banker at the rear. It's common practice in the early evening for locomotives to be attached in order to return them to the shed at Bridgnorth. Once again, delightful conditions greeted the North York Moors Gala, held over the weekend of the 7th and 8th of October. North York Moors-based Black 5, number 5428, was in action and passes through the forest near Newtondale. The gala featured the usual double heading. The Lambton tank is paired with schools number 30926. "34101 Heartland is working the lunchtime diner train. The Pacific is on long-term loan from the Great Central Railway. The East Lancs held its gala weekend on the 28th and 29th of October 1995. Crab 42765 is banked by 52322 at Brooks Bottom Viaduct on the 1345 freight. The Lancashire and Yorkshire 3F was making its last appearance in BR livery. The 060 will be repainted into its pre-grouping livery for its 100th birthday celebrations in January 1996. The locomotive is on home territory. This line was built by the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway. Line 2203 Black Prince departs Ramsbottom for Rawtenstall. IVAT 46441 departs for Rawtenstall. This is one of a number of locomotives moved from Carnforth in recent years. A4 6007 pilots Black 5 number 5407 at Burrs. Double heading was confined to the section of line south of Ramsbottom due to weight restrictions. The workings included some bizarre combinations, including tender to tender and smokebox to smokebox running. The autumn gala season on the preserved railways provides a welcome haven for steam against the uncertainty and turmoil elsewhere on the network. The line from Brockenhurst to Lymington achieved some fame in 1967 as Britain's last steam-operated branch. On the final day of steam, Sunday, April the 2nd, 262 tank number 41320 leaves Lymington. The commemorative headboard had been made for the occasion by a member of the Portsmouth Model Railway Society. Steam was, of course, to continue on the main line through the branch junction at Brockenhurst until July of that year. A Weymouth-bound local train accelerates away, having connected with the branch train on the 2nd of April. Now we'll move to the main line and a classic viewpoint from the High Bridge near Winchfield. The M3 motorway now obscures this view, crossing the line in the foreground. The Bournemouth-bound express passes on the 15th of April 1967. Now to Carlisle in the autumn of 1965. Jubilee 45697 Achilles arrives on a train from Preston before taking water and continuing north to Glasgow. The location is Stranraer, a little photographed place in the days of steam. A Britannia enters on a train from Glasgow earlier in 1965. Now to Stonehaven with a classic performer of the period, 60532 Blue Peter arrives from Aberdeen early in 1966. Finally, a rather more workaday performer. Carlisle-based Black 5, number 44911, heads north. "1995 will be remembered for the memorable double-headed runs through Devon. "75014 and Britannia head the Springs return run from Plymouth to Paddington. Now 46203, accelerating away from Uttoxeter after a photo stop in glorious autumn sunshine. A mountain of clag as Great Western Mogul number 7325 accelerates away from Droitwich on the first leg of a memorable rail tour.